Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience. I'm here tonight with my first impressions of the iFi Audio Uno. This was sent to me for review by iFi Audio and it currently sells for $79 US. And this is a combination USB DAC and headphone amp. This has one digital input, and that would be a USB Type-C on the rear, and has two analog outputs. One would be a 3.5 millimeter headphone out on the front, and RCA single-ended outputs on the rear. This accepts formats of PCM, DSD, DXD, and it is an MQA renderer. According to iFi, it has a total harmonic distortion of 0.03%, a signal to noise ratio of 119 decibels, and a dynamic range of 115 decibels. This uses a Sabre Hyperstream DAC chip by ESS, and the rated power output of this is 211 milliwatts into 32 ohms or 39 milliwatts into 300 ohms. This has like the larger Zendac and Zendac Signature and all that, it has the power match button, which is basically a two-way gain control. And then what's unique to this that the Zendac or even Zendac Signature doesn't have is an EQ button, which gives you basically four choices. You can flip through the EQ button, toggle through, and it's either off, or you have music mode, movie mode, and games mode, and I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. The size of this is very small. It's 3.5 inches wide by 2.8 inches deep front to back by about 1 inch tall, and it only weighs 92 grams, and that would be about 1/4 the weight of your average full-size over-the-ear headphone. I'll move in a little closer here and show this to you, and you can see just how tiny this thing is. On the front here you have your EQ button, which cycles through your 3 EQ modes or off. Then you have your power match button, which is basically a two-way gain control. You've got your on-off and volume switch here, and then you've got your 3.5 millimeter headphone output on the front, and that is single-ended. And then you have your RCA outputs on the back, so you can use this as a standalone DAC, and then it has your USB, and it's a Type-C input, and this doesn't need a power supply. It receives its power through the USB cable, and it does come with a cable. It's about, I'd say about 4 feet long, and goes from Type A to Type C, which will plug right into the back of this. Anyway, before I get into my description of the sound of this, I wanted to mention my source is a HP desktop computer, and I'm running Windows 10. I'm using the media player. I'm using CDs that were ripped to the media player in WAV lossless format. And the headphones that I've used so far with this, and I've had this about a week, gives me the Hi-Fi-Man Ananda Stealth, the Hi-Fi-Man HE400 SE, and the Grotto SR80E. So getting into the sound of this, pretty much like all of the Zencam, the Zendac, all that, they all have a slightly warm of neutral sound, and this is kind of following in that pattern. Just a little bit, slightly on the warm side of neutral, just enough to make it really nice to listen to, you know, where it doesn't sound thin, it doesn't sound overly analytical. This thing has a really nice sound to it. The clarity and resolution is outstanding for the size and the price of this unit. It has a pretty large sound stage and very good separation between the instruments, and I'll be honest, this does sound a whole lot like the Zendac. I've got the original Zendac sitting behind me here. That's the version 1, and that originally sold for about $129, but the original isn't available anymore, and the Zendac 2 is up to, I believe, $189. So this is actually less than half the price of the ZenDAC, and even cheaper than the Zen Air DAC, which I reviewed, probably a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, which was set to be, my budget DAC amp of the year, and it may have been bumped out by this, but I'll talk about that a little more in a second. But I don't know if you can see back here, if I set this on the ZenDAC, got it upside down, how much smaller that actually is than the ZenDAC itself. So this thing's tiny, it weighs almost nothing. Let me roll in. I did show you the back, but I didn't show you the top of this. You basically have three little lights here. When you cycle through your EQ, they're either all off, which means your EQ is off, or if the first one's lit up, that means you're in music mode. The second means you're in movie mode, and the third in game mode. I did want to point that out because that is a pretty big deal, having this EQ function on this. Did want to mention before I talked about that the power on this is pretty respectable. This does a very, very good job of driving the Hi-Fi Man Aria Stealth, but that's not the hardest headphone to drive. So I hooked up the Hi-Fi Man HE400 SE, which is quite difficult to drive. That headphone takes a lot of power, and this does a very respectable job with that. It actually sounds really good. I'm not saying that it brings out 100% of that headphone, because you need a lot of power, a lot of current. Bring out 100% of that headphone to bring out the full potential of the bass and really have good control of the bass. But this, you wouldn't notice that you're lacking anything with this unless you compared the HE400 SE hooked up to a much more powerful amp. That's the only way you're gonna realize it. It is lacking slightly, but like I said, this does a really respectable job, and I could definitely listen to the HE400 with this, and the HE400 requires a lot of power. It's definitely needs more power than the Sundara. So, it's up there. Probably, it's almost as hard to drive as the HE560, which is harder to drive than either of the first two Aria versions, of version 1 or 2. The Stealth is easier, and I haven't tried the Stealth with this, but I will before I do my full review of this. But I'm sure this has plenty of power for even the Aria Stealth. So, because like I said, the HE400 is, other than the HE560, the hardest to drive headphone I have. And, not as hard as the HE6, but I don't have one of those to try. But anyway, so yeah, this thing definitely, it's only rated at 211 milliwatts, but that's actually pretty decent for something this small, and it doesn't put out any heat at all. I didn't even notice it getting warm. So anyway, I did want to talk about the EQ for a second, and I'm glad that you can turn it off, because it says advertisement on the website that it has 3 EQ choices, but really it has 4, because off is a choice. So, and I did most of my listening with this so far in the off mode. I tried it in the music mode, and I guess the easiest way to describe the music mode would be comparing it to a TV. If you took a TV, and if you go into the settings, most modern TVs have what's called a vivid setting. And if you hit vivid, everything just becomes, the colors become more intense, the picture becomes brighter, and it looks really exciting at first. But if you watch it for a while, especially in a dark room, you start getting eye fatigue and you start getting a headache from it, because it's just too much. Well, that's kind of how I would describe the music mode on the EQ on this. It's a more vivid, more in-your-face sound, but to me, it quickly becomes fatiguing. Unless you're listening to it at a really low volume, then it's okay. But at a normal listening volume, to me, it's just too much. It's cool. It's, really gets your attention, but it, like I said, to me, it quickly becomes fatiguing. The movie mode, I didn't try it with a movie, but I did try it with music, and I will before I do my final review. I'll try it with a movie. I've got my 4K monitor behind me here, so also hooked up to my computer, so I'll pop in, you know, a nice 4K movie with a good soundtrack and try the movie mode. But listening to music through the movie mode, I also found it fatiguing because the movie mode is made to emphasize the dialogue, like, you know, what would come out of your center channel from in a surround sound. So it kind of emphasizes the dialogue, and in music that just makes the vocals a little too far forward, a little bit shouty sounding. So I didn't like the movie mode for music. And then the game mode, I'm not a gamer, so I can't really tell you how that works out, but listening to music through the game mode, it just sounded a little flat and a little lacking in dynamics, I guess. So anyway, but it may work fine for gaming. Like I said, I'm not a gamer. So anyway, there are a couple things that couple reasons I'm not really crazy about this amp. And it's basically not that there's anything wrong with it, it's just really, really small. And because of that, it's hard, the buttons here are kind of hard to push, and I guess my fingers are just too big and fat. And the volume knob, which is also your on-off, just kind of small. And the thing is just so lightweight. Like I said, this is, what, 92 grams? That's like 3 ounces. Okay, just the weight of the headphone cable can drag it off your desk. I mean, I had this sitting back here on the desk and had headphones sitting down here, and just the weight of the cable was pulling this off, you know, and it was only attached with the USB cable, so it didn't fall off. But, you know, just there's not any weight to hold it down. You just move your headphones and the cable itself will drag this thing around. So, you know, but if you're limited on space, if you need something really small, I mean, I don't think you're gonna find an amp and DAC any smaller than this. So anyway, I'll try to get my full review out in a few weeks, but it'll probably be honestly more like a month. I'm gonna try some more headphones with this. I definitely wanna try the ZMF Atrium. Not that, you know, I realize that's kind of a mismatch, a $2,700 headphone and an $80 DAC amp, but this thing does sound really good. But the main reason I wanna try that is because that's the only high impedance headphone I have right now. It's 300 ohms, so I want to see how this does, if it has adequate power to power a 300 ohm headphone, because some people are going to probably want to use this with, you know, some Sennheiser headphones that are higher impedance, and, you know, they're going to want to know if it has enough power. But I don't have a whole lot to compare this to. I do have the Zendac sitting behind me, the original one, and just in a real quick comparison, it has a very similar sound to the single-ended output of the Zendac. The Zendac does, to me, sound slightly better through its balanced output, but just a little bit more of a spacious, a little more three-dimensional sound stage, but it does sound great through its single-ended output, and this seems to sound very similar, but I'll do a little more extensive testing and comparing between the two before I do my full review. So far, I'm very impressed with this. I find it hard to believe that something this small and for this price, $79, can put out this kind of sound quality. And I just want to say, if you're using the headphone jack on your desktop or laptop computer or from your tablet or whatever, stop doing that right now. Spend the 79 bucks, get one of these, and it will drastically improve the sound. It will be a huge upgrade from the sound from the headphone jack of your device. Much better DAC, much better amp, and huge improvement. So anyway, this is probably, I don't see any way around it. I'd say will almost definitely be my budget DAC amp combination of the year, and I will be putting those videos out, and hopefully next week I'll start working on those. I usually wait till the end of the year in case something comes in right, before the deadline. I don't like to be one of those people that puts out their year-end review in November. I'm not trying to beat everyone else to it. You know, when I do it, it's going to be the best of 2022. And right now, this is the best budget DAC amp that I've heard. I said I'll compare this to Zendeck. I've also got the JDS Atom amp. And that doesn't have a DAC, so what I'll probably do is use the DAC out of this and run it into the JDS Atom and see how the amp in this compares to that amp. And that sells for $99, so it's $20 more, and it doesn't have a DAC. So let's see how this holds up against that. Other than that, I really don't have a lot to compare it to. I reviewed the Zen Air DAC a couple weeks ago, but I sent that back, and that left before this came in, so I didn't get a chance to overlap the two and do a comparison. But I'll be back with you in a few weeks to a month with a full review. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And the Headphone Experience on Facebook is up to 20.4 thousand members. So I'd like to see you all over there. A lot of great people and a lot of great advice. And once again, thanks for watching my video.